It was my youngest daughter, Ella, who unknowingly shattered my entire world one afternoon. We were in the living room, just the two of us, when she looked up at me with that innocent expression that only kids have. "Dad, I saw Mom with another man in your bedroom." My heart stopped. I remember feeling lightheaded, like someone had just punched me in the gut. I wanted to believe she had misunderstood, that it was some innocent interaction she had blown out of proportion. But the look on her face, serious, confused, and a little scared, told me this wasn't a joke. At that moment, I didn't react. I couldn't. Instead, I smiled, told her not to worry, and quickly sent her off to play. But inside, my mind was racing. I didn't want to believe it. How could I? Emily, my wife of 12 years, had always been the solid rock of our family. I trusted her completely. Betrayal wasn't even something I'd ever considered. Still, I couldn't just confront her based on what my daughter had seen. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So, I made a plan. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention, retracing her steps when she went out, checking her phone bills, and tracking her social media. Every small detail that once seemed innocent now felt like a piece of a bigger puzzle I didn't want to solve. Eventually, I set up a hidden camera in our bedroom. My last desperate step to either confirm or, hopefully, disprove the suspicion that had been gnawing at me. When I finally sat down to review the footage, I found what I feared most. There he was, the man my daughter had seen. In our bedroom, with my wife. After that bombshell from Ella, I couldn't get the image out of my head. My own daughter had seen her mother with another man, in our bedroom of all places. I kept telling myself it was a misunderstanding, something innocent, but deep down, I knew better. The thought made me sick to my stomach, but I knew I couldn't just confront Emily based on Ella's words. I needed proof. So, I began my quiet investigation. It wasn't easy. Emily was good at covering her tracks. She still acted like everything was normal, maybe a little more distracted, but I chalked that up to stress at work. She smiled when she kissed me goodbye in the mornings, laughed at the kids' silly jokes at dinner, and even snuggled up next to me in bed like she always had. But now, all of it felt like an act. I started small, checking her phone bills and credit card statements. I wasn't sure what I was even looking for. Maybe a suspicious transaction or an odd phone number that popped up too frequently. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was violating her privacy, but I pushed that thought aside. If what Ella said was true, privacy wasn't something Emily deserved anymore. The phone records didn't give me much to work with. Most of the numbers were people I knew, her coworkers, her friends from the gym. But there were a few late-night calls that didn't sit right with me. They were to a number I didn't recognize, and they happened when she was supposedly working late or out with friends. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stoke my suspicions. I started paying attention to her behavior more closely, looking for any signs that she was hiding something. Every time she left for a work dinner or meeting, I took note. Her trips had become more frequent, but she always had a good excuse. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd been blind all along, not seeing the signs that something was wrong. The real turning point came when I decided to take things a step further. I went online, ordered a hidden camera, and installed it in our bedroom. It felt wrong on so many levels, but I told myself it was the only way. I had to know. I couldn't live in this limbo anymore, wondering if my life was a lie. A few days passed, and I barely slept. Every time Emily went out, I was on edge, waiting to see if something would happen. Then it finally did. Late one night, after she'd told me she had a client dinner and wouldn't be back until late, I reviewed the footage from the camera. And there he was, a man in our bedroom. My stomach twisted into knots as I watched them together, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no more denying it. My wife was having an affair, and she didn't even have the decency to do it away from the home we'd built together. The home where our kids slept peacefully down the hall. I sat there, staring at the screen, completely frozen. The image burned into my brain. Him, in our bedroom, on our bed, with her. Emily, my wife. The woman I'd loved for 12 years. I couldn't even process it at first. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. My chest tightened. My hands started to tremble, but I couldn't look away. How could this be happening? This wasn't some movie or a bad dream I'd wake up from. It was real. The more I watched, the more it sank in. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't some stupid one-time fling. The way they moved around each other, like they'd done this a dozen times before, told me this wasn't new. They were too comfortable, too intimate. I forced myself to rewind the footage. Maybe it would be different the second time. Maybe it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But no, it was exactly the same, only worse. I noticed things I hadn't before. The way Emily laughed, soft and light. The way she touched his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. The way she let him kiss her like he owned her. My wife. It felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I couldn't breathe. All the memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, the birth of our kids, the late nights laughing on the couch about something stupid we saw on TV. All those years together, wiped out in the blink of an eye. I couldn't stop myself from watching it again and again. I kept looking for something that would make it hurt less, something that would explain why. But there was nothing. The more I watched, the more I hated her. Every smile, every touch, every kiss, they felt like knives in my back. I was angry, so angry, but more than that, I felt betrayed. Like I'd been the punchline of a joke I didn't even know I was part of. I sat there in the dark, my hands shaking, not knowing what to do next. I wanted to storm out, find Emily, and confront her right then and there, demand answers, yell, scream. But something stopped me. I knew if I went in there, guns blazing, she'd find a way to turn it around. She'd make excuses, try to gaslight me, maybe even make me feel like I was overreacting. I couldn't let her do that. Not this time. No, I needed to think. I needed a plan. If I was going to confront her, I needed to be smart about it. I needed to hit her where it hurt, not just emotionally, but in every part of her life. I wasn't going to just walk away quietly and let her get off easy. She had to pay for this. The rage that had been bubbling under the surface began to boil over. I wasn't just angry. I was furious. She'd betrayed me, violated our home, disrespected our family. She had the nerve to bring this man into our bedroom, the same place where our kids would come running in on Sunday mornings, jumping into bed with us. How could she? I could feel my teeth clenching, my fists tightening at the thought of it. I needed more than just one video. One recording wasn't enough. If I was going to blow this whole thing wide open, I needed more evidence. I needed to build a case so airtight that there was no way she could deny it. I kept the camera running, knowing they'd probably be back again. And when they were, I'd catch them. I'd make sure Emily and this mystery man felt the weight of every choice they'd made. But who was this guy? That was the next question. He wasn't anyone I recognized, at least not from what I'd seen on the footage. But if he was part of her work life, it wouldn't take long to figure out who he was. Emily was high up in her company, a senior marketing executive with a solid reputation. If this guy worked with her, it would only make things worse for her. The thought of destroying them both, personally and professionally, began to take shape in my mind. As much as I hated it, I had to act normal around her for now. I had to keep pretending everything was fine, that I didn't suspect a thing. I had to kiss her goodbye in the mornings, ask her how her day was, hold her at night, even though every touch made my skin crawl. I felt like I was living a lie, but it was the only way. If she got any hint that I was onto her, she'd start covering her tracks. And I couldn't afford that. The next few days were hell. Every time I saw her, I wanted to scream. Every time she smiled at me or kissed me like nothing was wrong, I wanted to throw it back in her face. I couldn't understand how she could look me in the eye, how she could sit down at the dinner table with our kids like she wasn't tearing our family apart. It took everything in me to keep it together, but I had to stay focused. This wasn't just about getting angry and lashing out. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. She wasn't just going to lose me. She was going to lose everything. The respect of our friends, her standing at work, maybe even custody of our kids. I was going to make sure she regretted every single moment she spent with that man. I started doing my own digging. I searched through her phone when she wasn't looking, checked her messages, and scrolled through her emails. Nothing obvious came up, but I wasn't discouraged. I knew she was hiding things well, and I wasn't going to stop until I found it all. Every time I looked at her, the rage burned hotter. But I had to keep it buried for now. She thought she had gotten away with it, but she had no idea what was coming. A few days passed, and the routine of pretending was wearing me down. Every time Emily smiled at me, every time she acted like the loving wife, it made my stomach turn. I was still gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike. But something unexpected happened that threw everything off course. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had left work early, under the pretense of having some appointments, but in reality, I wanted to check the camera footage again. I needed to stay on top of things, see if there was anything new. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. Emily's car wasn't there. She wasn't supposed to be out. It was a work day, and she hadn't mentioned any meetings. I let myself into the house, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Maybe she was with him again. Maybe they had switched locations, knowing they couldn't keep using our bedroom. I felt a tightness in my chest, my pulse quickening as I headed upstairs. I needed to check the footage right away. I made my way to the computer and loaded the recent recordings. As I fast-forwarded through the clips, expecting to see Emily with him again, something strange caught my eye. The house had been empty most of the day, but then there was a movement in the hallway. I slowed the footage down and watched closely. It wasn't Emily. It was someone else, a woman. She moved quickly, rummaging through drawers, opening closets. I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Who was she? And what the hell was she doing in my house? Then it hit me. This wasn't just some random woman. This was Emily's sister, Sarah. I hadn't seen her in months, but I recognized her immediately. What was she doing here, sneaking around my house while we weren't home? My hands trembled as I rewound the footage, trying to catch more details. Sarah was moving with purpose, like she knew exactly what she was looking for. She spent a good 20 minutes rifling through Emily's things, her drawers, her closet, even her jewelry box. It didn't make any sense. Suddenly, she froze in front of Emily's bedside table. I watched in disbelief as she pulled out a small box. She opened it, staring at whatever was inside for a long moment, before carefully closing it again and slipping it into her purse. Then, she turned and left just like that. I felt a cold wave of confusion wash over me. What the hell was going on? Why would Sarah be sneaking around in our house? And what was in that box? At that moment, the situation shifted. It wasn't just about Emily's affair anymore. Sarah was involved somehow. But in what? Was she covering for Emily? Blackmailing her? Or was she working on her own agenda? My mind raced with questions, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't have control over what was happening. I needed to find out what Sarah had taken. This was a whole new layer to the betrayal, one I hadn't even considered. My focus shifted. I wasn't just dealing with Emily anymore. Now I had to figure out what Sarah was up to, and why she was involved in this mess. That evening, I acted like nothing had changed. Emily came home, greeted me like everything was normal, and I played along. But my thoughts were elsewhere. I had to get that box back. I had to know what was inside. And I had to figure out what Sarah had to do with all of this before I made my next move. The next few days felt like I was living in some twisted alternate reality. While Emily went about her usual routines, smiling, laughing with the kids, kissing me goodnight, I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. What was she doing in our house, and why had she taken that box? I was now dealing with more than just Emily's betrayal. Sarah's unexpected involvement threw everything into chaos, and I needed answers. I knew I had to confront Sarah, but I couldn't just call her up and ask what she was doing snooping around our home. She'd deny everything or make up some excuse. I needed a way to catch her off guard, force her into telling the truth. But before I could plan that, I had to figure out what was in that box she took. One night, after Emily had fallen asleep, I snuck into our bedroom closet. I had to be careful. Any wrong move could tip Emily off that I knew what was happening. I searched through the drawers, feeling like some kind of thief in my own home. Finally, I found the spot in her bedside table where Sarah had taken the box from. It was small, barely noticeable, but the drawer seemed lighter than before. The box was gone, just as I suspected. I sat there for a moment, my mind racing. What could possibly be so important that Sarah would sneak into our house and steal it? I knew Emily and Sarah weren't particularly close. There had always been tension between them, but it never seemed serious. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Emily's affair. Something bigger was at play here. Over the next few days, I started to dig into Sarah's life. I didn't know much about what she had been up to lately. She lived in another town and had her own life. But I knew she had recently gone through a nasty divorce. Her ex-husband had been a real piece of work, and she had struggled to get back on her feet after it all ended. But what did that have to do with Emily? Then, out of the blue, Sarah called. It was the first time in months she had reached out to me directly, and the timing couldn't have been more suspicious. I answered the phone, doing my best to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Sarah. Long time, no talk," I said, keeping it casual. "Hey, yeah, it's been a while," she responded, her voice a bit too chipper for my liking. "I was thinking about stopping by this weekend. Maybe spend some time with you guys and the kids. It's been a while since I've seen my sister." Red flags were going up all over the place. Sarah never came around unless there was a reason. And now, after stealing something from our house, she suddenly wanted to visit? There was no way this was a coincidence. "Sure, that sounds good," I said, keeping my tone light. "The kids would love to see you." We ended the call, and I immediately knew I had to prepare for whatever Sarah was planning. I wasn't sure what she was after, but I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The weekend arrived, and true to her word, Sarah showed up. She was all smiles, bringing gifts for the kids, chatting away like nothing was wrong. Emily seemed happy to see her, but there was an odd tension in the air, one I couldn't quite place. Sarah was playing nice, but I could tell there was something else going on beneath the surface. After dinner, the kids ran off to play, leaving the three of us alone in the living room. Emily excused herself to go check on something upstairs, leaving me and Sarah alone. The moment Emily was out of earshot, Sarah's entire demeanor changed. Her smile faded, and she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Have you talked to Emily lately? Like, really talked to her?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. I felt my pulse quicken, but I kept my face neutral. "What do you mean?" Sarah hesitated, looking like she was carefully choosing her next words. "I mean, you know things aren't always what they seem, right? Emily's been keeping things from you." My heart raced, but I didn't let it show. "I think we're all keeping things from each other, Sarah." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe, but some secrets are bigger than others." Before I could respond, Emily walked back into the room, her cheerful self again, completely unaware of the tension between her sister and me. Sarah quickly changed the subject, but I knew we weren't done. There was something she wasn't telling me, something bigger than just the affair. As the evening went on, I couldn't help but wonder, was Sarah blackmailing Emily? Were they both hiding something even more damaging than the affair itself? And what was in that damn box? After Sarah's visit, the pieces of this twisted puzzle were starting to fall into place, but not fast enough. There was more going on than just Emily's affair. Sarah had made that clear without saying too much, and the box she had taken, whatever was inside, was now part of a bigger game. I was done waiting. I had been patient. I had stayed quiet, but it was time to take action. I spent the next few nights in a fog of planning, thinking about how to hit them both. Emily for betraying me, and Sarah for whatever secret she was holding over my wife's head. The more I thought about it, the clearer my path became. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about exposing them both, tearing apart the lies they had built around me, and making them face the fallout. But I needed to be smart. Rushing in would give them the upper hand, and I couldn't afford that. I had to set a trap, one that neither of them would see coming until it was too late. First, I decided to get more concrete evidence. Sure, I had the footage of Emily and her lover in our bedroom, but something told me there was more. So, I began tracking Emily's movements. She was always careful, but not careful enough. I started noticing her patterns, when she would leave for work dinners, or when she'd claim she was running errands. I even followed her a few times, keeping my distance, watching her meet up with her lover at a small coffee shop outside of town. She had no idea I was there, and that gave me the edge. With every move she made, I was one step closer to bringing her down. The next phase of my plan was Sarah. The box she had taken haunted me. I had to know what was inside. I couldn't confront her directly, not yet, but I had an idea. I'd get her to bring the box back to me without even realizing it. Sarah was clever, but she had a weakness, her need for control. I knew if I could make her feel like she was losing control of the situation, she'd panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes. So, I sent her a message, pretending to be Emily. "We need to talk. I know you took the box. Bring it to me, or everything comes out." I waited. It didn't take long for Sarah to respond. "Emily, calm down. I didn't take it from me. I took it to protect you. I'll explain everything, but not in writing. Let's meet. Bingo. She took the bait. I told her to meet at a quiet park near her place the next evening. She thought she'd be talking to Emily, but it would be me instead. When the day came, I watched from my car as Sarah arrived, pacing nervously with a small bag in her hand. I gave it a few minutes before stepping out, walking up behind her quietly. She turned, expecting her sister, and her face paled when she saw me. "Where's Emily?" she stammered, looking around like she might have a way out. "She's not coming," I said calmly. "But we're going to talk." For a moment, I thought she might bolt, but then she steadied herself. "This isn't what you think, Dan." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I shot back. "I know you've been in my house, and I know you took something. Now, I want to know why." Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting around nervously. It's not what you think. I was trying to protect her." "Protect her from what?" "Me." I laughed bitterly. "Because from where I'm standing, you're both in a lot of trouble." She shook her head, finally handing me the small bag. Inside was the box she had taken. "You'll understand once you see what's inside." I opened the box and found documents, a lot of them. Financial statements, contracts, receipts. But as I sifted through them, the truth hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just about the affair. Emily and Sarah had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for years. Thousands of dollars funneled into secret investments and personal luxuries, all hidden under layers of paperwork I'd never bothered to check. They were in this together, not just to hide an affair, but to steal from me. I couldn't even speak for a moment. The betrayal ran so much deeper than I'd imagined. "You were in on this the whole time?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Emily was in over her head. She didn't know how to stop. I only stepped in to help her cover it up, so you wouldn't leave her. I laughed, cold and sharp. "Leave her? After what I know now, she'll be lucky if I don't take everything she owns." Sarah looked desperate, pleading, "Please, Dan, don't blow this up. Think about the kids." "The kids?" I repeated, anger rising. "You're going to talk to me about the kids? After you and Emily dragged our family through this mess. Now you want to play the concerned aunt?" I stepped back, shaking my head. "You know what? You'll get your turn soon enough. I'm starting with Emily, but trust me, Sarah, I haven't forgotten about you." I left her standing there, gripping the empty box as I walked away. I had everything I needed now. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. The real damage was in those financial documents, and Emily had no idea what was coming. I walked away from Sarah that night with a new clarity. All this time, I had been focusing on Emily's affair, but now I realized that was just a small part of the betrayal. The real betrayal was much deeper, more calculated. Emily and Sarah had been stealing from me, bit by bit, behind my back for years. The financial documents in that box were a gold mine of information. They showed exactly how they'd done it. Secret withdrawals from our joint accounts, bogus expenses, and sneaky investments all funneled into a private account I never knew existed. What made it worse was that they'd used our money meant for our future, our kids' college funds, our life together. I spent the next few days combing through every detail, cross-checking the statements with our bank records. I hadn't been paying close enough attention before, trusting Emily to handle most of the financial stuff. Now, I could see how easily she'd been able to hide everything. She'd been slowly bleeding me dry, and I had been too blind to notice. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not Emily, and certainly not Sarah. I knew I needed to act, but I had to time it right. I wasn't interested in just confronting Emily anymore. I wanted to destroy her entire life the way she had destroyed mine. It was a Thursday evening when I decided on my plan. Emily and I were sitting at the dinner table, the kids chatting away about their day at school. I watched her closely, noting the way she smiled, the way she acted like everything was normal. How long had she been living this lie, playing the role of the devoted wife while tearing our life apart behind my back? As soon as the kids went to bed, I made my move. "I've been thinking," I said casually, catching Emily's attention. "We haven't had a family get-together in a while. Maybe we should invite everyone over this weekend. Your family, mine. It's been a while since we've had both sides together." Emily looked surprised but nodded. "That sounds nice. We could do a big dinner. I'll text everyone tomorrow." I could tell she didn't think anything of it, which was exactly what I wanted. She had no idea what was coming. I planned to have everyone there. Her parents, her friends, and Sarah, of course. They would all be there when I dropped the bomb on her. It wouldn't just be a quiet, behind-closed-doors confrontation. No, this was going to be public, brutal, and inescapable. Over the next couple of days, I prepared meticulously. I copied the financial documents, made sure I had the footage from the hidden camera, and organized everything into a neat little package. When the day came, there would be no denying what she had done. By the time everyone had settled in the living room after dinner, I knew it was time. The room was filled with chatter, laughter, and the usual family warmth, but underneath that, I could feel the tension building within me. I stood up slowly, and the room fell quiet as I cleared my throat. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, but my focus was on Emily. "There's something I need to talk about," I said, my voice steady. Emily turned toward me, still smiling, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. She wasn't expecting this. For the past 12 years, I've trusted Emily with everything. I began scanning the room. My life, my home, our family, and our future. But recently, I've discovered that trust can be a fragile thing. It can be broken, sometimes in ways you'd never expect. Emily's smile faded, her brows knitting together in concern. "Dan, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about betrayal," I said, my voice tightening. "And I'm not just talking about an affair." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Emily's face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I know, Emily. I know everything." Her eyes widened, and the room went dead silent. Everyone was staring now. Her parents, her friends, Sarah, all waiting for me to explain. I could see Sarah tense up, her hand tightening around her wine glass. "For weeks, I've been gathering evidence," I continued, turning toward the coffee table where I'd stashed the folder of documents. "Evidence of an affair. Evidence of lies. And worst of all, evidence of theft." I pulled out the folder and set it down in front of me. Theft," Emily stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She was trying to keep her composure, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Dan, what is this?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I opened the folder, pulling out copies of the financial documents Sarah had stolen from the house. "These are bank records, Emily. They show that for years, you and Sarah have been siphoning money out of our joint accounts. Thousands of dollars gone. And it didn't stop there, did it?" Her parents gasped. Emily's father shifted in his chair, looking like he was ready to stand up, but he didn't. Her mother was frozen, staring at the papers I was holding. "Dan, wait," Emily said, her voice shaking now. "It's not what you think. I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, my voice cold. "Because the last time I checked, you were taking our money, using it for private investments, vacations, and who knows what else. And on top of that, you were lying to me, lying to our family, betraying everything we built." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the footage, the way she had looked at him in our bedroom, the way she'd laughed with him like I didn't even exist. "And that's not even the worst part," I added, looking around the room, making sure everyone could hear me. "Emily wasn't just stealing from me. She was cheating on me too. In our house, in our bed." I could see the shock ripple through the room. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand, while her father sat there, his face ashen. Emily's friends looked around in disbelief, clearly uncomfortable with the bomb I'd just dropped. Emily's face crumpled. "Dan, please." I wasn't finished. "I've got everything. The bank statements, the video footage, every last detail. You betrayed me, Emily. You betrayed us all." Sarah, who had been sitting quietly through all of this, finally spoke up. "Dan, you don't understand. I was trying to help her. She didn't mean for this to happen." I whipped around to face her. "Help her? By stealing from me? By sneaking around behind my back and taking something that wasn't yours?" I took a step closer, and Sarah flinched. "You were both in this together, and now you're both going to deal with the consequences." Emily broke down, sobbing into her hands, while Sarah sat there, wide-eyed, at a loss for words. The room was filled with tension. No one spoke. It was like time had stopped, and everyone was waiting for the final blow. "I want a divorce, Emily." I said, my voice calm but final. And I'm taking everything. The house, the accounts. I'm taking the kids. You can explain to them why you destroyed our family. I stood there for a moment, watching as Emily tried to pull herself together, her hands shaking, her face streaked with tears. Sarah was frozen, her face pale, knowing she had no way out. And then I walked out. I didn't need to say anything else. They could all sit in that room and process what had just happened. My part was done. After I walked out of that room, I didn't look back. My heart was pounding, my head swirling with a whirlwind of emotions. I had just dropped a bomb on Emily, on our family, and exposed everything in front of the people who mattered most. But as I stepped outside into the cool night air, a strange sense of relief washed over me. It was done. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. I got in my car and drove, not really knowing where I was headed, just needing to be away from the house that had been filled with lies. I ended up at a quiet park a few miles from home. I sat there, staring at the empty playground, replaying everything in my mind. The affair, the theft, the public humiliation. It was everything I had planned, but it still felt surreal. For hours, I sat there, lost in thought, until my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer, confirming the next steps we had already discussed. Divorce papers would be served within the week. I wasn't going to drag this out. Emily and I were over, and I was ready to move on with my life. But that wasn't all. I had also filed for full custody of the kids, based on the evidence I had gathered of Emily's betrayal and her financial misconduct. It was a long shot, but I was prepared to fight for them. By the time I got back to the house, it was close to midnight. The lights were still on, and through the window, I could see Emily sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. She looked defeated, completely broken, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I didn't go inside. Instead, I went to a hotel for the night, knowing I needed distance. The next morning, I returned to pack up my things. Emily wasn't there. She had left early, probably to stay with her parents. The house felt empty, like the life we had once shared had already evaporated. As I packed, I noticed small reminders of the life we had built, photos of the kids, mementos from vacations, little things we had bought together over the years. All of it felt hollow now, every memory tainted by what she had done. I packed only the essentials, leaving most of the past behind. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from that night spread quickly. Emily had to face the consequences. Her family was devastated, especially her parents, who had trusted her completely. They couldn't believe what she had done. Not just the affair, but the financial betrayal that had torn our family apart. Sarah, too, wasn't off the hook. Word got out about her involvement, and she became a pariah in the family, shunned for her part in the scheme. Emily tried to reach out to me several times, calls, texts, even showing up at my workplace once. Each time, I ignored her. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her apologies. There was nothing she could say that would undo what she had done. The divorce process moved swiftly, and despite her attempts to fight for more, the evidence I had gathered left her with little leverage. In the end, I got the house and a significant portion of our assets. But most importantly, I got the kids. It wasn't easy explaining things to them. How do you tell your children that their mother had been lying to them, for years? I did my best to soften the blow, focusing on the fact that we were going to be okay, that life would go on. They were hurt, confused, but they were resilient. I could already see them adjusting to our new life, slowly but surely. As for Emily, she moved into a small apartment in town, far from the life of comfort she had once known. Her reputation at work took a hit. There were rumors, whispers about her affair, her financial dealings. She still had her job, but her career, like her personal life, was in ruins. The man she had been having the affair with had cut ties as soon as the truth came out. It seemed no one wanted to be associated with the wreckage of her life. Sarah, too, faced her own consequences. Her involvement in the financial scheme came to light, and while she avoided legal repercussions, her relationship with the rest of the family was shattered. She moved away, trying to start over somewhere new, but I didn't care enough to find out where. Months passed, and life slowly returned to some sense of normalcy. I got a new job in a different city, packed up the kids, and left the past behind. We started fresh, in a place where there were no reminders of what had happened. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. The anger and pain eventually dulled, though it never fully disappeared. I learned to live with it, learned to move on, and focus on what mattered: my kids, my life, my future. Emily's betrayal had shattered me, but it hadn't destroyed me. In the end, the revenge wasn't about destroying Emily's life. It was about reclaiming mine. I had exposed her, yes, but more than that, I had freed myself from the lies, the deceit. I had walked away from the wreckage, knowing I'd come out stronger on the other side. And that, I realized, was the real victory.